Every one of us in this room faces emotional extremes. Some of the things that we'll go through, we just never expect to see happening sometimes. I remember one occasion when I was a young fellow and this group of guys decided that they were going to pick on me. I was short. You know, the heroes always pick on the short guys because it's tough to do that. I remember the guys getting me on this particular day, and they grabbed my hair and they swung me round and round in circles because I had fairly long hair, and they threw me in the river at Spraden School. I remember the anger that I felt inside, and I remember the kind of feelings I had. If only I could get them on their own, and I would do it. But they were never on their own. They were the kind of people who just didn't hang around on their own when they'd done some damage to somebody else. So I remember standing in the river and thinking, well, how do I get these guys? What do I do? And I wanted to do something to get back at them, something that would hurt, something that would injure them. So I feigned real pain in the river, and I stood there, and I started falling in the water. It's not very deep there, it's only about that deep, and I was, like this, and the guys got worried. Over here, Gary, come over here, go over here. So I was, I don't know how I can make it, And I got over the riverbank, and they all reached out, a whole group of them, all reached out and grabbed a hold of me. I grabbed a hold of them, and I went, boom! And I had my moment of pleasure, because it went from agony and pain to joy to see these guys laying in the water beside me. You see, we go through all sorts of emotions. Sometimes we go through emotion because of damage that's been done to us. Sometimes because of situations that we couldn't have any control over. Every one of us is going to see all sorts of different things happen in our life. And so tonight, as we go on this journey, I want to talk about this whole emotions deal so that we can understand ourselves and we can understand others. You see, the reality is that for all of us, there's certain things that will affect us, certain things that will get in our minds and our eyes, get into our hearts at times. Let's have a look at it. What is an emotion exactly? How do you define it? We know what it feels like, but how do you describe it? I want to pick up a dictionary definition tonight. You see all these different emotions? There's your dictionary definition. Simple, we know it. There are all the different extremes you could hope for. But I want to put it into words now. It's any specific feeling, any of various complex reactions with both psychical and physical manifestations as love, hate, fear, anger, and all the other range of things that are there. Any specific feeling is an emotion, something where we feel. And there's some of us here in the room tonight, I'm sure, who would like to think that we're okay, that we don't really get emotional. You know the kind of image, you see it around here sometimes. You know the kind of thing that happens. I'm cool, dude. It's all right. Nothing's going to faze me. Don't try it. But hidden behind that exterior, there's all sorts of things going on. The things that have forced us to do it. And you know, really what we often end up facing is a situation where eventually something goes wrong. And we want to be in a situation where we are able to hit the alarm bell and say, help! I want out of here. I don't want to have to face this. But if any of you think that you're cool and you're not going to face things, let me tell you now. You may have lived a short time or a longer time, but one day there are going to be things that hit your emotions that are much, much bigger than you could ever imagine. And most of us are optimistic and we don't think it's going to happen. I'm 51 going 52 now. And I lived through some pretty emotional stuff when I was younger, but when I became a Christian at the age of 17, And from that point onward, for quite a few years, I really felt that, there was no way that anything was going to get me. No way that I was going to be controlled by others, because that's often the consequence that happens when other people do manipulative things around you. And I was going to shut those emotions out. I wasn't going to let things take control whatsoever. Well, I can tell you, don't become a pastor if you want that to happen. One of the realities is that we're going to face things that are far bigger, far more difficult, far deeper than we ever imagined. And so tonight, as we go on the journey, if you're feeling pretty optimistic, then great. But it's not going to live forever, I can tell you now. You see, there are things that do evoke very powerful feelings in us. Things that evoke emotions that are very real. Now, most of you know some of the emotions. Some of you have been through some pretty strong extremes in the last few weeks. But I want to suggest, as I did this morning, that there's one that evoked a huge amount of emotion last night for some of you. You were weeping, you were gnashing your teeth, and you were crying. As Canterbury is reported in the Herald, these words: Canterbury Intelligence won the argument and their class won the match as they beat Wellington. Herald headlines: I'm a Cantabrian. So I was sitting there trying to work on my computer, concentrate on preparing this message while the television was going on the side of my office, and I was going, yes, yes! About time those guys got a trouncing. Yes! I'll try and concentrate on my work again, but I couldn't resist. There'd be something happen. Look, Mertens has done this. The head would be around. I'd just catch it. They'd replay it. They had to replay it just for me. See, the extremes are there, aren't they? Some of you will remember the time when I was speaking some years ago. Think about 3 years ago. Last time Wellington managed to beat Canterbury. And I unfurled the flag as I was speaking on miracles, and I unfurled that flag for you. And I talked about the fact that miracles do happen. And what happened? There was a massive emotion. As everybody, yeah, we beat you, we got you! Wasn't much to trigger the emotions, was it? And yet, we want to lock it down. And I want to suggest for those of you who are Christians here tonight, that when you come to church, you actually often will play the emotional game. You'll do things that are okay, but there's other things that you're locked down on. For those of you who are not part of the Christian community yet, glad you're here. But all of us face the issues of dealing with those things. You see, it's nothing uncommon to man to face emotional roller coasters. And certainly that was a roller coaster ride. Nobody in their wildest dreams in Wellington thought that Canterbury was going to win so well. Of course, Canterbury knew, eh? You guys are locking down your emotions right now, I can see. That's what you guys are doing right now. Notice we've got some guests here tonight. I noticed one of them's a Cantabrian. She's wearing red and black. Give her a hand. Give her a hand! You guys, you see, your emotions had control of you. Those emotions were not going to let those hands snap. It was just a simple thing. Just a few muscles. It didn't take much. But you see, that's what we do. We lock them down. We control them. You see, the reality is, for all of us, we do face emotions. So I want to look at the things that actually evoke those emotions. Here are the three main headings I want to touch on. First one's trauma. Every one of us faces trauma. Whether it happens to be trauma in our family and our relationships, whether it happens to be trauma at work, whether it happens to be trauma in something we've tried to do that failed, whatever it is, trauma is one of the key things. The second heading I want to click on is change. Change is one of the greatest things that will bring out emotion. I couldn't believe it as we flew into Australia. I had nothing against Australians or Australia until I suddenly realised I did. It took me quite a while to understand what was happening, but Pauline and I, we flew over to Australia to train over there in a college in Tasmania. And we're flying into Melbourne, and as the plane came down, I looked out the window, and the first racial comment I ever made about Australians, I made that day. It wasn't a direct racial comment. It wasn't an intended criticism consciously. I just looked out the window and said, oh, you can tell it's Australia. Look at all the jolly gum trees I've got out there. It was a very negative statement about Australia. I didn't realise it until about a year later when I was studying the book Customs and Culture by a guy called Nida, who talked about the reaction of people as they will change from one country to another. And the stupidest things, many missionaries who go overseas, many workers who go overseas to other countries from America, craved ice cream and Coca-Cola in the early days when there was none in other countries. They would even make comments about the poor conditions in the country, not to allow them to be able to have these favoured juices, the Coke and the ice cream. Then they'd get back to America, and a strange thing? They'd pig into it and then discover they really didn't like it as much as they thought. See, change will evoke all sorts of emotions in us, and they'll really touch the core of our being sometimes. Then the third one I want to touch on is passion. Sometimes it's a passion. That really touches the emotions, doesn't it? The kind of thing, when you get close to your girlfriend for the first time, and she allows you to come close. This is my wife, just for those of you who think I'm doing something mysterious here. And you want to kiss her. What actually happens is just before you do, the emotions are evoked inside you, and the heart goes like this. I don't know about you, but mine did. Oh man, I'm going to get a kiss. Come on, be honest. The reality is that we are in touch with our emotions much more than we'd like to think we are sometimes. I remember the first time with Pauline. She stood on the steps and I stood on the bottom one. Alright? The reality is that passion will be evoked, but it's not just passion in that sense. There's also passion in relation to the things that we believe in, the things we hard out want to do, the things that we think are great to be able to achieve. Those kinds of things can drive us really strongly, and our passion will be there. So I want to go through these three headings and sort of do a bit of exploring. I wasn't meant to do that. I wasn't doing it before. And here we are. Trauma. When we face loss, broken relationships, self-failure, when we have lost opportunities. They are the primary things that cover the area of trauma. If you think about them carefully, you can take those in all sorts of directions. Lost opportunities could be the failure of others. The self-failure can be because we thought we were going to be able to achieve something we never did. My daughter constantly reminds me that years ago I said I was going to build an Ukraine plan, that I could shoot across the water at half the wingspan and zip across the South Island really quick because that's home. And it's never happened. I'm capable of doing it. I could end up feeling like a failure, but one day I could, and probably will, make one and shoot across the South Island. But for many people, they have these aspirations and dreams, and they go through some severe trauma because the thing they thought they could do, they just couldn't do. I watch a little bit of American Idol and also a little bit of Australian Idol and a little bit of New Zealand Idol. And you see the looks on people's faces. They're standing there bravely as they're brought down to the last election, and they're standing there with faces like this. Yes, I'm feeling really good. And when it comes down to the choice, and they're one of the last two to be chosen for the last group of four, and there's two of them, and one of them's going to get into the last group, and the other one's not. I was standing there smiling. And then the announcement's made, and the name's given, and they say the name, and then sometimes they say the name and they say, this person's been selected to say, or this person has been selected to go. So when they hear their name, they don't even know sometimes what's going to be said afterwards. And you see their faces trying to be staunch, and then when they miss out, they go, oh. Look, kind of goofy smile, eh? The emotions in the heart are showing on the face. And even though they're trying to smile because they know they keep TV cameras on, somehow there's something lacking in it. It's not the enthusiasm. You know, you can imagine, they could make it far better, couldn't they? They could go, wow, I lost! Hey! It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like that. You see, we get dragged into these traumas sometimes. Sometimes they're traumas that we self-inflict. Sometimes the traumas we face are much more difficult. Broken relationships. Kinds of things where we live out of broken relationships. I remember Louise. We named our oldest daughter Adele Louise because of one of my girlfriends. I know some of you who are visitors here might think that's strange, but it's good. Louise. I loved her so passionately. We were going to get married till one of my best mates nicked her off me. I remember the anger and the frustration I felt because he was a friend, and for me, faithfulness to other people was an ultimate high edge, and there's no way I would have betrayed him. No way I would have stolen his girlfriend. And he knew before I travelled all the way up to Nelson, he had known for 3 days that she was my girlfriend, and initially he didn't realise it was my girl, and then when he realised, he didn't even have the courage to get on the phone and say, hey Gary, don't bother coming to Nelson, I've nicked your girlfriend. I think he must have been going through some pretty bad emotions because he was flip-flop over her and he knew I was flip-flop over her, and she chose to go his way because I think he was a university student who smoked a pipe and was always scented and he sort of was a cool guy. But he was that kind of cool guy that at the end of the holidays she found out what it felt like. Because he just wanted a holiday girlfriend. He didn't care about her. He married another girl altogether. And I remember going through the trauma and emotions of that kind of broken relationship and some of the things I went through. And I went through a stage where I had a wedding to go to in Nelson and I had a broken leg. And so friends drove my car up with me in it, up to Nelson from Christchurch. I arrived in Nelson and I'd been there a couple of days when Louise asked if she could come and have a talk with me. She said to me the words I thought I'd never hear. She'd like to go out with me again and she was really sorry. And, you know, she really wanted to re-establish a relationship. The hardest thing I ever did in my life at that age was to sit there and tell Louise that I loved her very deeply, but I couldn't trust her. And even though my passion, my physical self, my sexual self and my mind said she was an incredibly attractive woman, I needed somebody I knew I could trust because emotionally I didn't want to be ripped apart again. You see, the reality is we walk through these kinds of things. Traumas there, loss, whether it's loss of a family, or loss of a job, loss of all sorts of kinds that we face. Loss of an issue that we will face in our lives. We can bury most of our emotions, but when we face loss, grief compounds the whole issue. And we can go through things where we feel emotions we never imagined. I found it really difficult to know how to react when my dad died last year. Because inside me there was some stuff in the past where I'd been feeling quite angry from my way back, and although I dealt with it in one sense, when he was dying I didn't want him to go where he was going, and because he didn't really want to particularly go to heaven, not because he didn't want to, but because he felt it was an integrity issue, that he had refused God all his life when God wanted him, and so he didn't feel as if he could, as at the last minute when he knew he was dying, ask God into his life. I went through incredible internal emotions. I didn't know what to do with it at points. Because I wanted my dad, in spite of the things that happened when we were younger, I wanted my dad desperately to be in heaven. See, we go through all sorts of things, and most of us can identify with those kinds of things. You know, the shortest verse in the Bible, it clearly states, very clearly states the passion of Jesus in terms of his emotions. He heard that Lazarus had died, and he was a good friend. And the shortest verse is 2 words. Jesus wept. It's okay, people. to have emotions. So for those of you who are trying to lock them down, don't do it. You'll only screw yourself up inside, because what actually happens, if you lock them down, it kind of twists you around. You cannot deal with those things on your own. And emotions have been given to us that we can express them, but there's ways in which we do it, and they're wise ways. You see, let's have a look at this whole deal in terms of trauma. I want to look at it like this. How people function. Let's have a look at how people function here. This is what it's like. For some people function like this. You know that kind of life? One moment they're doing well and you know people like that, and you've probably got friends like that. You feel like you're going on some roller coaster ride, and sometimes your friendship feels like you're on the edge and you're about to fall off. Oh! And it's really hard to cope with. So can you imagine how hard it is for that person internally to be coping with this stuff? Then there are other people who are very different in how they function. So they function like this. Pretty flat responses. I want to suggest that neither of those models are necessarily totally healthy. Neither of those models are necessarily totally healthy. Either the blue line or the red line. So let's think about this a little more, and we're going to deal with that line in one sense for each one of us. Then the next one I had on my list, the second one, was change. Change. When we are looking at this whole issue, both negative and positive changes happen in our lives. Now, some of the emotions we face will be really healthy for us when we're facing change. Sometimes the emotions we feel make us cautious, cause us to be wise on occasions. Other times the emotions we feel will cause us to act rashly and do inappropriate things. So we want to balance that out tonight. Let's think about it. Negative and positive. First thing is change of home. My family moved houses 14 times during our childhood. I met a young girl recently who at the age of 17 had moved 18 times. And most of those 18 occasions had been between the ages of 7 and the 18-year-old, 17-year-old I think she was at the time. Change at home, that can do all sorts of amazing things, and it can go either way, positive and negative. Change of school, because that usually goes with change of home. Work, change at work or change of work, the things that we do. Change of position. Sometimes we get promoted or demoted, and the trauma, the emotions that go with that can be extreme. You know, we get promoted and, yay, I got a great job. I'm going to be earning lots of money. Come home. A week later, well, I don't know why I was so happy about that job. They expect me to work from 7 in the morning till 9 at night. I don't get any time with my family, and I'm really angry at the fact they deceived me with this. Well, the fact of the matter is, that actually may not be even the boss's fault. Maybe you didn't ask the right questions. Those kinds of issues we face. Lifestyle. Sometimes it's forced on us by circumstances. I always remember that story of Trevor Farrell in Philadelphia, who that night when he was watching television, 11 years old, and as he's watching the television, they talked about the homeless people. I always remember the story that he convinced his parents eventually to go out and to give a blanket. And as they left the house, he took a pillow with them. And the thing that was so poignantly powerful in the story, that this man who was crouched over a grate on the road to try and keep warm from the steam coming from the factory that was pouring heat into that grate, in the middle of the night, young Trevor goes up to him and gives him the blanket. This man who was crouched over the grate, and his pillow that he'd grabbed off his bed just before he went. And this man said 3 words: God bless you. Changed Trevor's life, his family's life, and everybody they were associated with. Some people got really angry at what happened. One of the greatest developments of homes for homeless. 80,000 people have been housed because of that young 11-year-old boy. He didn't get a proper schooling because of what happened. But he became an extremely successful man. But what made the man say, God bless you? I've sat and pondered this. I wonder what changed that man's circumstances to cause him to be crouched over a grate trying to keep warm in a night when homeless people were dying in that great city. I wonder if any of us here in this room tonight might one day be crouched over a grate somewhere or something similar, wondering why things happened the way they did. What kind of emotions does that evoke in us? Health. Of course, I had to include that one. Feelings, emotions. I live in a household where I'm the only male. At one point, we had six females living in a house. You've got no space in the month that's free from some kind of trauma. I can tell you. But did you know that men also have the same thing? Did you know that? Most guys don't admit it, but they do. If you track the trauma points that are happening in your life, guys, if your wife is wise enough to track you, they will discover that you also have a pattern. It just doesn't express itself in the same way, but it's still there. And most people don't recognize those kinds of issues that are going down. So let's think about those kinds of things. What happens when you start getting older? You know, I'm getting slightly older, and I had to go to the doctor recently because I started getting these sharp pains down this leg and now this leg, and tonight it's doing it on me. Goes totally dead where you could put a pin in it. I can't feel a thing. The doctor said to me, it's because of the pain you've been living with in that foot for all these years. He said you've been favouring that leg, so it's twisted the back of your spine, and so that's what's causing this to go dead, because it's done some damage in the back there, and we're going to have to sort it out. Well, I was never going to be sick. I don't know about you. Hello? Your emotions are very flat there right now. Friendships. This one here takes it to the extreme. Right now, we're seeing a trauma in our culture around here in New Zealand. It used to be guys all the time. Bang, there'd be fights and there'd be all sorts of stuff. Actually, the guys are actually being pretty polite and quiet nowadays. It's the girls. I've never seen girls get so jolly catty. We've had girls turning up here thinking they're going to beat up on other girls who are in our buildings, and they've been sent sometimes by other girls. We've had to get to the state where we've had to get the police and call them up. That proved not to be greatly successful on Friday night, but never mind. Just not because they did anything, but because they had been overheard threatening to do something, so we decided to give them a bit of a fright. You see, the thing is, friendships have powerful influence on us. But what about a worldview? Can you imagine living in Germany in the Second World War? Your worldview would have been very, very suddenly changed when Hitler rose to power if you claimed to be other than what he was. You could die for it. Many of my gypsy forebears, many of them died. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them died. Of course, the Jews did as well, along with one or two other groups, psychiatrically ill. The worldview shifted, and how do you cope with those kinds of things emotionally? And a lot of people, what they did during the Second World War in Germany is that they just suppressed their emotions, because if you let your emotions be heard, you let them be spoken out, you were likely to die for it. Things that evoke emotions, the last one, passion. Well, I talked a little bit about this in one context before. I want to push it a little further at this point. In terms of relationship, any relationship you have, sometimes the emotions are really, really healthy, and sometimes they are very bad. One of the reasons we have such a high divorce rate in New Zealand is because guys just don't choose, and girls just don't choose to control their emotions. Oh, I like that girl. Might as well do. It's all rubbish. It's all rubbish. And it's very destructive. Sometimes the passion's good and healthy, and if you keep it measured, great. But in terms of interests, the kinds of things that you really like to do, sometimes the emotions that you have can be really positive. But there are people, a whole group of people in Australia and New Zealand in the last couple of weeks who've been arrested because their interests have been inappropriate. Their passions have been for the wrong things, and it's horrifying to the rest of us to see it. In fact, the fact that they even got caught for what they'd been doing emotionally affected a whole lot of us who saw it on the news. And I can tell you how I felt. I thought, how dare they do that? That was the kind of strength of the emotion in me. And sometimes I thought maybe I should have been a lawyer so I could become a judge so I could slam a few more in prison. You go through that kind of thing. Not always good. But vision can provoke emotions. They can evoke emotions in our lives that can be really, really great. But I can tell you right now that sometimes people can have a vision and they can feel so impassioned by it that they let their emotions dictate to them and they get it all wrong. Let's take an example of this. In the Old Testament, in the Bible, there was a guy, Moses, who got really close to God, and he went onto the mountaintop, and he was away so long that Aaron, his brother, was hanging around. They decided he must have died. He's away for quite a few days at this point. And the people came to Aaron and said to Aaron, look, Moses and his God, they're a washout. They're gone. How about we make our own God? And so they did. Aaron let them convince them, and they made a golden calf, and they started praying to this thing that they'd made with their own hands. Well, Aaron let his emotions get carried away because he wanted to be the big one. He wanted to be the chief. He wanted to be the top guy. And while Moses wasn't around, he could be that. But when Moses came back, we know his emotions sowed through because he had stone tablets with the 10 Commandments on it, didn't he? And what did he do? Someone tell me. He smashed them. He got angry. Really angry. And because of it, they suffered the consequences. You see, the emotions can dictate to us, and vision can be great. Great to have a vision to lead, but how we do it, what we do, is actually far more important than the thing we do itself. So let's look at the things that actually create emotions now. There's a personality type, childhood experiences, and character development. Personality type. Some of you won't have, there's all sorts of ways of understanding the personality of a person. But one of the ways that's been used is 4 temperaments. You've got the sanguine, the choleric, the melancholy, and the phlegmatic. If I don't read it, I always forget one of them. Now, this is a helpful way of seeing it. It's not a perfect way. No system's perfect. But, you know, if you're a sanguine, you're outgoing, responsive, warm and friendly, talkative, enthusiastic, and compassionate. If you're a choleric, you're strong-willed, independent, visionary, practical, productive, decisive, and you're a leader. If you're melancholic, you'll often be gifted, analytical, ascetic, self-sacrificing, industrious, and self-disciplined. If you're phlegmatic, you'd be calm, quiet, easygoing, dependable, objective, diplomatic, efficient, organized, practical, and humorous. Now, the truth of the matter is we're always a mixture of two things, but we're always very strong, much stronger in one. But let's look at the weaknesses of all those things. The sanguine is undisciplined, emotionally unstable, unproductive, egocentric, and he tends to exaggerate. The choleric is cold and emotional, self-sufficient, impetuous, domineering, unforgiving, sarcastic, angry, and cruel. Those are the weaknesses. The melancholic is moody, self-centered, persecution prone, revengeful, touchy, theoretical, unsociable, critical and negative. And the phlegmatic is unmotivated, is a procrastinator, is selfish, stingy, self-protective, indecisive, fearful, and a worrier. Now I want to ask you a question. In terms of your personality, you just heard a brief summary here tonight, and we're not going to try and dwell on it. But what are the strengths and the weaknesses that you have, because they will be tied in with the emotional state of yourself? And I want to say this. Don't settle for who you are. Every one of us in this room, God has a design that we will not be like that. We may be biased towards one thing now, but can I make a suggestion? That Jesus was actually meant to be a perfect model. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Jesus, he was a guy who knew how to be angry but not sin at the same time. But he was a guy who knew how to be absolutely compassionate in a situation when others were getting angry. He's a guy who had a balance. If you look at all the personality types, he's a guy who had a balance between them all. He knew exactly how to manage things. And that's, I believe, God's design for us. And we have, because of our sinful nature, the things we keep doing wrong, the things we keep messing up on, the way we manage our emotions, we have actually tended to alienate the things that God would like in our lives. And that's why we end up isolated from Him. That's why we don't end up doing the things we could do. That's why we don't get to the peaks in the lives that we could get to. And whether we claim to be a Christian or not actually doesn't seem to make much difference, in my opinion. There's optimistic Christians who say, if you become a Christian, everything will become great. If you become a disciple, everything will become great. It's not a decision. It's who you continue to be, not what you are on a moment. And so I'd like to touch on that. Childhood experiences will affect us. I was an angry young man. And when I became a Christian, it took me 2 years to even start to slow down being angry, especially with my father. Childhood experiences do have an input, and we need to learn to deal with those things. We need to be willing to look at them. Whoops. Go back again. Guys, can you take me back one slot? The remote ain't obeying me. One more. The last one, character development. What have we allowed to happen in our lives? What do we stop happening that needs to happen? Have we put ourselves in a place where we're able to allow others to give us input that's going to be helpful for our development? And if we haven't, why? Think about it. There's nothing so silly as a person who can't enjoy the life the way they were meant to be designed to do so. If we hold back off and we say, I'm not going to let you in because I had a bad childhood. I want to say, phooey. Not a good excuse. Whatever excuse we have, it's not going to be good enough at the end of the day. See, character development is important. We can't rest where we are. We need to be willing to be reshaped. In fact, the Bible tells us really clearly that we need to be being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's considered to be worship, not singing songs to God. It's only part of the deal. So we need to be in a place where we are being transformed. So I want to finish tonight with looking about the deal about managing my emotions. What are some key things I could do? And by far, this is not extensive. We could have spent a week on this quite easily on this subject. But I want to give you some good key ones that I've found really helpful personally. The first one, when I lack, when there are excessive emotions there, when emotions I don't want exist in my life, when unexpected things happen to me, when they do damage to me, then I need to be able to be a person who's actually going to be able to manage those things. So here are some ideas about how to manage them. The first one I'd like to suggest is to make a decision not to worry. A high percentage of people actually have extreme emotional experiences, that are destructive, because they worry about consequences. They worry about things. And yet Jesus, right in the beginning of his ministry, he said, don't worry about anything. He meant it. He didn't mean that all of us could go around in life and we could say, oh, but I want to worry about this. Duh. Don't worry about anything. You don't need to. Why? Jesus made it very clear. The reason why was because he even knows the number of the hair on your head. Now, for some of you, that's an easy count. For others, it's more difficult. But he knows. He just knows. He doesn't have to spend the time going through my thick hair and saying, He just knows. He said if he can look after little birds of the air, can't he look after you? So don't worry. It's the first thing I would like to make a suggestion on. The second one I'd like to suggest is that we develop understanding of our situation. Did you notice what was read out here tonight? A discerning man keeps wisdom in view, but a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth. A man of knowledge uses words with restraint, and a man of understanding is even tempered. You see, if you can grab hold of getting hold of understanding your situation, if you can grab hold of that, I can tell you right now, it'll help you not to go all over the place. Now, some of you know well that when I was younger, I had some pretty extreme emotional sides to me. More recent days, as I've been a Christian 34 years, isn't it, or something, whatever it is, 34 years plus. But one of the things that's actually happened for me is that I can be absolutely rushed off my feet under high pressure from the external. But inside myself, actually really nothing really worries me. And I want to tell you why that is in a moment. But one of the reasons that's happened is that I've sought to really develop some understanding as to why I do these things and to really work on changing who I am by grappling with the way that I react. The third one, be slow to speak. Scripture tells us to do that. Too often we create problems and we create emotive situations by speaking too loudly, too quickly, too harshly, or whatever. Too something. So be slow to speak. Then the fourth one I want to touch on. Ask yourself this question. In God's vast eternal plan, does it really matter? If you're starting to get stressed, or you're starting to get upset, you're starting to get emotional, and you just don't know which way to turn, ask that question. It takes the sting out of it. Actually, I've discovered there's very little that really matters. Some people think, if you do this, and this will be right, and this will happen in the church, or you do this will happen in your family, and they get it all wound up into a big corkscrew pressure situation. And so people get it in their family. You've got to do this. And what actually happens? The dominoes start to fall. And before you know what's happening, everybody's emotions been badly affected. And yelling and getting angry and getting emotive or going silent. And by the way, silence is an expression of emotion, which is very dangerous and destructive. Be slow to speak. Don't shut up. In God's vast eternal plan, does it really matter? Most things actually don't. Very few things in my life have I been able to say, yes, this does really matter. And if it does, then I know I can approach it. But by then, I've had time to think through it. By then, things have calmed down. By then, perspective has shifted. And the last one I want to touch on tonight is develop a cheerful heart. The same scripture that was read out tonight says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Very good expression. I know you go in with a cheerful heart and you can change the whole environment where you work. Did you know that? Some of you haven't discovered that because you go into work because Sunday you have a great time with God, or maybe in the weekend you had a great time if you didn't know God yet. You had a great time, Monday comes in and you got out of the wrong side of the bed. Your wife and yourself, or you must have swapped sides if you're married, or you must have climbed out and hit your head on the wall. I don't know what you do. But Monday morning comes along And it's tough stuff. And you go, somebody says, how'd your weekend go? What does that mean? It means you went on your weekend. You just made the comment about how successful you made your weekend. Nobody else's fault. Can't blame anybody else. See, if you develop a cheerful heart, it's going to change things. It'll bug the earth out of some of the guys who want to remain sad, but that's fun if you use it wisely. So I want to finish with this last slide. John Wesley, who was the guy who was with one of the two founders of the John and Charles Wesley, founded the Methodist churches. In their day, they were an incredibly powerful community of Christians. So all sorts of things happen. And sometimes people confuse people being busy and doing things with getting emotional and not coping and all that kind of stuff. People have often said to me, oh, Gary, I saw you racing around and you must get you're a very highly emotional person. Anybody that knows me really well will tell you, actual fact, my emotions don't go highs and lows so much. I do have some good, healthy highs. I do have some dips. Being a pastor sometimes can be pretty lonely at times because you've got to make some unpopular decisions along with your board members in this church. It's a journey that we face. And see, Charles and John Wesley worked through some things, but John Wesley made a statement I found very helpful in my life. Though I am always in haste, I am never in a hurry, because I never undertake more work than I can go through with calmness of spirit. And the reality is, for every one of us here tonight, and don't go dumbing this on somebody else and saying, you need to sort your emotions out. You know what you've just done? You've just dumped on somebody and you've screwed the emotions around. You've played a control thing with them. Don't do it. Jesus never manipulated people, never played around with their emotions in that way. He was straight, honest, loving, caring. And if you want to know what it's like to know him, it's just the most amazing thing. And I can say with integrity right now, with each one of you here, that the journey for me has been a wonderful journey, and it continues to be. And I have no regrets about what I'm doing. I could be doing all sorts of other things. I could have been much, just all sorts of things I could have been doing today. But I'd rather not do those things. I'd rather be doing what God's called me to do today. And part of the deal of getting emotions right is to actually figure out what God's designed you to be and to actually do it. Because when you do what you're designed to be, you're not trying to be a train on a rail that normally runs on a railway track trying to run down the road. It just won't happen. Got no steerage, got no direction. It'll just keep sailing through the corners. You see, the reality is that God's called us and he wants every one of us in this room to know what it is to have a balanced life. And I pray that that'll happen for each one of you. Let's talk to him together. And if you'd like to say amen at the end of this, then please feel free to do so. It simply means I agree. And or you can say yes or whatever you want to say. If you want to say no, that's fine. It's between you and God at that point. But we're going to give everybody an opportunity to talk together with him. Father God, there's a mixture of us here. Some of us have had pretty extreme emotional experiences in our life. And sometimes we've allowed things to go haywire when we shouldn't have. And we know. But sometimes, God, we've felt powerless in the situation. So we would ask you to help us to know how to approach this in our own personal lives so that we might be different people that are going to make a difference in this world. That we might be able to take that peace and the fullness of joy that you told us we could have. Because we recognize you can only have that kind of peace and fullness of joy when there's no excessive emotional extremes. So God, we'd ask you to help us to be reshaped so that we can get to know you and we can get to live like you and to truly do what you've asked us to do, to be just like you. In Jesus' name. And they all said, Lord bless you. Let's give a team a big hand for what they've done here tonight.